Hi everyone, welcome back to Maximum Attack Rallying. It is time for your Thursday dose of rally chit chat. There's been quite an interesting announcement that I want to talk about in this video. Just before we get into that though, I just want to mention a couple of things. If you haven't already watched the Rally Rush video from Tuesday, do give that a look. It's across my socials. That's a quick 1-minute news update on all the stories from the world of rallying. It's a new feature that I'm trying, so do give that a watch. You can find it here on YouTube as a short. It's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, it's on X. So give that a watch. I think it's worth another mention of Martin Sesks, isn't it, from Latvia last weekend. What an absolutely incredible performance that was. I know some people have said that he knew the roads and he was favoured by road position. I don't care about any of that. For him to jump in a hybrid Rally1 car for the first time, I know, apart from a test, short test, for him to do that and be on the pace is really impressive. And I think, you know, there must be talk among all the teams now about what his future looks like and whether there's a space for him somewhere. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he develops, isn't it? So in this video, however, I don't want to talk about Martin Sesks. I want to talk about cars. I like talking about cars. This channel is all about it. So has been an interesting announcement from the FIA. They have announced a new format, I suppose, a new kind of addition to their pyramid structure. So in rallying right now, we have a very well-defined pyramid, starting with Rally1 at the top with the hybrid cars, Rally2 underneath that with the four-wheel drive, old R5 cars, Rally3 under that, which is narrow body four-wheel drive cars, Rally4, which is via Peugeot 208s and Fiestas two-wheel drive, Rally5, which is your entry-level cars, which is still too expensive. We need Rally6. That's a different story. So what the FIA have done, they've decided to try and align the touring car pyramid with this rally pyramid a little bit more. So at the top of the touring car pyramid, globally, you have TCR, which is for modified production cars. I think they're all 2-litre turbo, aren't they, TCR cars, two-wheel drive. I quite like the TCR format, actually. I think it looks quite good. There's been some issues with it in sporting terms, with domination of particular cars and championships not running as regularly as they should. I don't know. But technically, I like the format, I think. Anyway, below that, the FIA have now introduced the concept of 2 new categories. And the reason that that is important for rallying is that those 2 categories are actually very closely based on 2 rally categories. So the FIA have suggested that Rally4 cars and Rally5 cars will now fit into these 2 entry-level touring car categories. So they're called TC Lite 4 and TC Lite 5, and those numbers are significant because a TCL 4 car is effectively a Rally 4 car and a TCL 5 car is effectively a Rally 5 car. Does that make sense? I hope so. I think that's an interesting concept, isn't it? So basically the idea is that you will have, let's say you have a Rally 4 Peugeot 208. The idea is that you will, with some very minor modifications, be able to take that car and then there's touring car races with it, and vice versa. So if you decide to build a TCL4 Peugeot 208 with some very minor modifications, you should be able to go rallying with that car. So basically, what would happen if you start with the rally car, you would remove the passenger seat, add some ballast to account for that. You would, or you can keep the seat. You add the door net, the window nets and things, take the spare wheel out, take the handheld fire extinguisher out, and fit slick tyres, and you can go racing. That's an interesting concept, isn't it? So let me just check. You'll have to excuse me looking at my laptop. As I said, this applies to Rally 4 and Rally 5 cars. So for Rally 4 cars, you're allowed an engine up to 2 litres normally aspirated, which no one does anymore, really, do they? The type of... You'd be surprised at how many 2-litre normally aspirated cars are out there in the world, outside of Europe, which is very much gone down the downsizing route, but not really in the type of, you know, the small hatchback category that kind of dominates. And then you're allowed a turbocharged engine or supercharged engine up to 1333cc. And for Rally 5, you can have a normally aspirated engine up to 1600cc, I think, and the same 1333cc for turbocharged. There's a minor difference in terms of the performance allowed. So, sorry, I'm reading again. It's done on power to weight. So for Rally 4 and TCL 4, it's 5 kilograms per horsepower. and for Rally5/TCL5 it's 6 kilograms per horsepower. I hope you're following. It's very technical. It's not very technical, but well, there's lots of numbers floating around, isn't there? So, but the idea is that the two will effectively be interchangeable with some very minor modifications, and that raises a question, doesn't it? Will anyone actually do it? And I think that's the most interesting part, isn't it? Will anyone do it? I have mixed feelings about this. I think from the FIA perspective, I certainly see the logic. I think in principle it is a good idea. I think, effectively, and I think Andrew Wheatley said this as well, he's Rally Sport Director or whatever it's called, it takes us a little bit back towards the old days of Group A and Group N, doesn't it? So during that time, you had Group A cars and Group N cars, so Group N cars were nearer to production spec, Group A cars were more heavily modified. And in theory, a Group A rally car wasn't that different in its concept to a Group A racing car. It was a modified road car. The types of cars that tended to be used were different, at that time, because touring car regulations were obviously, during the 90s at least, were generally for 2-litre two-wheel drive cars, whereas rallying obviously went down the four-wheel drive car route. But you could argue that, say, an F2 car wasn't that different to a touring car in some respects. So I see the concept. I quite like the idea of it. I like having some alignment between the two, between circuit racing touring cars and rally cars, because they should be fairly close to each other, shouldn't they? These are fundamentally kind of related forms of motorsport in a way. Yes, I know they're very different in terms of the format, but there should be a link there, shouldn't there? Because traditionally there always has been a link there. So I get that. I think the problem for me comes in, will it actually happen? Who is likely to buy a Rally4 car, use it at, I don't know, a rally in Belgium one weekend and then go and do a touring car race at Spa the next? In reality, I don't see a lot of that happening. I hope it does in a way. I think it would be very interesting, wouldn't it? And it would be a good way for a driver to develop their skills and be able to use their car for multiple events. So I think it would be interesting, and I would like to see people doing it, but I'm not massively convinced that it will happen on any meaningful scale. I think the other thing that concerns me slightly, and I am going to have to look down again a little bit more, is, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong file. So I've brought up the regulations for Rally4 and Rally5 because I was interested. Because one thing you have to be very, very conscious of here is that while in theory it will be possible to use a rally car for racing and a racing car for rallying under this regulation, the requirements for those cars are very, very different, aren't they? If you think about the requirements for the circuit racing car, they're going to be very different to the rally car. So you're going to want the car to be much lower, for example, when you're using it for circuit racing. You're going to want the springs and dampers. You're going to want much more stiffness. You're going to want much more front camber, for example. So there's going to be some changes that people are going to want to make when they're going from rallying to circuit racing. And I was looking through the regulations to see how much freedom it gives them to do that, because my concern here is that while in theory the cars should be the same, I do wonder if we might see an additional stack of parts homologated by the manufacturers to optimize the car for circuit racing. I've been looking, so the subframe, for example, you can change the mountings of the subframe. So if the subframe has soft rubber mountings, you can change those for nylon or aluminium. You're not allowed to move the subframe to change the geometry, which is what Renault did, for example, on the Clio Cup cars. But there is a tolerance of plus or minus 5mm, and this is motorsport. So you can bet your bottom dollar that someone is going to try and use those 5mm to their advantage. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's some scope there for some skullduggery in terms of new parts. We might see, are we going to see the same with the track control arms? This shouldn't affect the Rally5, TCL5 cars as much because they are slightly more restricted in terms of the parts. But Rally4 cars, while based on road cars, are a bit more like Group A, not completely, but they use a lot more homologated parts. So I can see more specialist circuit racing parts being introduced if the manufacturer thinks there's a market for them. So we could see different subframes, we could see different track control arms, different top mounts. We're almost certainly going to see different springs and dampers. And then you reach a stage where it's really nothing like taking a Rally4 car, bolting some slicks to it, and going to Spa or to Silverstone and doing a circuit race, is it? You're going to then be in the point where it's more like converting a gravel car to a tarmac car, where you're actually changing quite a lot of the suspension to make that car suitable. So I think that's my concern. I think, as I said, in principle, it's a good concept, but I think the regulations, the way the regulations are worded for Rally4 in terms of what you can do, you can change bushings, you can have some tolerances with the way some parts are mounted. I think we're going to probably see manufacturers developing TCL kits for their cars, and I don't have a problem with that in principle, because I would rather see a car that kind of worked better in one situation or the other. And I have no problem with TCL as a concept in terms of having these kind of junior kind of touring cars, because it is a bit like the Clio Cup and things. So I like that concept of car. But I think, again, it's this crossover thing. For me, I think it kind of messes that up a little bit, and I think we'll see two quite distinct cars that look very similar, but one will be sitting a bit higher and a bit softer and have a bit more travel, whereas the other one will be on the deck, loads of camber, and end up being quite a different car. So anyway, I think it was an interesting concept, worthy of discussion. Again, I'm pleased that the FIA are trying to at least do things, trying to align the two disciplines a bit more in terms of their technical regulations. So I do think overall it's a good thing. But if anyone is expecting someone to show up with a Rally4 car in a circuit race and win, I think they're going to be disappointed, because I think those cars are going to end up being a little bit more different than perhaps the FIA are suggesting. So anyway, like I said, worthy of discussion. I hope you enjoyed that, and I think as these technical things come out, I will try and do little videos here and there. So I think that's it for this week. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, follow me on other socials, and if you haven't watched the RS2000 build series, do that, and I will see you again next time.